The voices of disability activists was an important factor in the defeat of the Care referendum, and we saw how the government caved on the issue of the Green Paper last Friday. So I would just suggest to members of the media that it might be worth your while to talk to the Taoiseach today, talk to the Minister of Health today, and I'm not certain of this, but there might be an interesting answer on the long COVID issue. Long COVID is one of the issues that will feature at the press conference across the road, which is about tomorrow's private members' time debate, which is on disability justice. We will be registering the fact that the withdrawal of the Green Paper is down to the campaigning pressure that was put on by disability activists, who are now a force in Irish society, a force in Irish politics. They had that effect on the Care referendum. It wasn't all down to them, but they were a key factor there. And now they forced the government to retreat on the Green Paper. Tomorrow's motion, I think, will put to the fore now the issue of scrapping means testing for disability payments and having a living income for people on disability, 1 in 2 of whom live in deprivation, and 1 in 5 of whom live in consistent poverty. I note the fact that the Scrap the Green Paper Coalition are organising a protest at 11 o'clock tomorrow to coincide with the debate, where they will be highlighting their demand for a payment which covers the cost of disability in this country, according to the Con report, 3 years old. If you update it for cost of living between 10 and 14,000 a year. Final point that I'd make, I got to run, but in case people want to talk to me about this afterwards. In the second city in this republic, there is a story that the local media are on, but the national media, I think, should start paying attention to. Is the question of water quality in the city, and the very large number of people who are turning on their taps and getting brown water or orange water after nearly 2 years of not criticising Uisce Éireann on the issue. I see the Taoiseach criticised them yesterday. I think that's a sign that it's under pressure from public opinion in the city, and I think that this is quite a big issue in Cork, and if people want to talk to me about that later, I'm happy to chat. So if there's any brief questions or answers before I run this gauntlet here. Ask them that question about the long COVID though. Something going on. Okay, thank you.
This is Simon Harris's First Leaders this morning, and I will be questioning him on the termination of pregnancy act review conducted by Mary O'Shea and the contents of the Primetime Investigates last night, but also on why, given that we got a bill passed here by a majority leader last May to change the legislation, amend it in line with Mary O'Shea's recommendations, why that bill has been held back in that committee consistently, and government are stopping the progress. There's also the issue of the rogue agencies, which was covered last night, and I have a quote from Simon Harris from 2016, which is 8 years ago, when a similar investigation conducted by the Sunday Times revealed some appalling behaviour by rogue agencies and the intimidation of women in crisis pregnancy. And at the time, to sort of paraphrase what he said, he indicated that he was sickened by the contents of the investigation and he would waste no time in passing legislation to regulate these agencies. That's 8 years ago. It's now 6 years since repeal, almost 6 years since repeal, and we have a huge amount of issues arising from the review to do with the delivery of reproductive rights in this country, not least the fact that hundreds of women have since had to leave this country by boat and by plane to access terminations for some of the saddest, most tragic reasons to do with fatal fetal anomaly. So this is what I will challenge him about today. And earlier on I wrote to the Health Committee again asking them to progress the bill that was passed by a majority, given a free vote here by Leo Varadkar last May. So that's the issue I'm going to raise with him. But just to raise with yourselves today, another issue which I think is hugely important this week and that's the question of the growing crisis in the Middle East. On Sunday, I attended a demonstration at Shannon, where hundreds of people marched up to the roundabout and for a period of time blocked the airport in a very passionate demonstration to say, end the use of Shannon Airport by US warplanes. And it was the day after the drone attack from Iran to Israel, which kind of I thought was very important, because what it indicated was, as the crisis in the Middle East escalates, the use of Shannon by American military will also escalate, as it has done since October, after the Hamas attack and the war by Israel on Gaza. The numbers of US flights coming through Shannon, carrying troops to the Middle East, has increased very, very dramatically. The figures are there on the Shannon Watch website if any of you care to have a look at them, but I'm going to raise this at order of business because I think this House needs to have a full debate on the implications of the escalating war in the Middle East and where that situates this country. If we erode our neutrality further, we're putting this country in danger by allowing an imperial force like the US facilitating them to use our airport to transport their troops, and unbeknownst to us, possibly weapons and hardware as well, because they do not inspect those flights. So I'll be raising that and looking for a debate on that issue, and then challenging the Taoiseach on the question of abortion legislation. All right, any questions?
Do you condemn the drone attack on Israel?
Condemnation is easy, Jack, when you're in these situations, but that's not the point. Did I condemn Israel attacking the Damascus embassy and killing 7 members of the Revolutionary Guard? No, I didn't. But it's quite obvious what happened here was that Israel continually provoked Iran into making a response. I think all of that tragedy of the Middle East, which all stems back to the occupation of Palestine since the Second World War, by Israel, by the attempt to plant settlers in the area to destroy the Palestinian population, is where all this stems from.
So do you condemn the attack?
No, I don't condemn the attack of Israel on Damascus. I don't condemn the attack of Iran on Israel. I'm not in the business of condemnation. I think what we need is analysis, and we need to have a clear position of standing in opposition to the escalation of war in the Middle East on all sides.
If you're opposed to the escalation of the war, how do you not condemn an attack?
Because I'm not condemning the attack because you guys just want me to say I condemn one side over the other.
But you can condemn all sides.
I didn't condemn Israel's attack on the Damascus embassy, because at the time I thought this is not the condemnation is not the main point. The main point is to try and get an end to the war in Gaza and to defuse the entire situation in the Middle East. I'm not in the business of condemnation. You guys may be, but I'm not. All right.
We're going to spend a lot of time this week trying to highlight the importance of the Raise the Roof national rally that will be happening outside the Dáil next week, which we hope to see large numbers of people take to the streets in support of a motion that's put forward by the Raise the Roof campaign on behalf of trade unions, housing campaign groups, left political parties in the Dáil, and many others who are part of the Raise the Roof campaign to demand a radical change of direction by the government in terms of the ever worsening and utterly disastrous housing and homelessness crisis. The latest evidence of the need for a radical change of direction from this government, from its failed housing policies, is the National Youth Council's report showing half of the young people in this country between 18 and 29 very unhappy with their housing situation, more than half having seen their mortgage or rent costs significantly increasing in the last year, and a huge mental health crisis for young and working people, rooted in the fear and anxiety that they will not be able to put a secure and affordable roof over their head. So this crisis is just getting worse. and the government seem unwilling to acknowledge that their policies are failing. So that motion will be calling for the reinstatement to the no-fault eviction ban, will be calling for a dramatic increase in the direct construction of social and affordable housing, for a significant increase from the current 10% social and 10% affordable obligation for private developments to dramatically increase that, so we get a far higher proportion of newly constructed private development being made social and affordable, and much more serious and radical measures to deal with the scandal of tens of thousands of vacant and derelict properties around the country, often being hoarded by speculators, property speculators, while we are facing a dire housing crisis. The other thing I just will be mentioning in that regard today and during the week is increasingly the people who are finding themselves driven towards homelessness are people who are working, often on quite decent incomes. Now, we have raised this with the government again and again and again about how they have simply no answer for people who are over the social housing income thresholds. It's bad enough if you're entitled to social housing, you'll be waiting 10 or 15 years for a council house, and the likelihood of finding of a HAP property is almost zero. But if you are marginally over the social housing income threshold, you're entitled to nothing at all. You're absolutely goosed. And you then get trapped in emergency accommodation because you don't even have HAP to get you out of there. Not that it would be easy if you got it, but at least with HAP you've got some chance. But you're not even entitled to HAP. So this week, again, I'm dealing with a family facing eviction, 3 kids, both of them working. Their net income is €48,000, €1,000 over the threshold. The only rents available in the area they're trying to rent, €3,000 a month. In other words, to pay the rent out of their own income, they would have to pay 75% of their income in rent. Completely unviable, so they are now facing homelessness. And I could list a litany of similar situations. So the government have to address the issue of working people who are entitled to no support whatsoever, but increasingly are being coddled in the housing and homelessness crisis. I just, in a few sentences, mention one other initiative we're taking this week is we've circulated this morning an open letter to all Oireachtas members about the disgraceful decision of the German government at the weekend to storm with riot police and then ban a conference on Palestine, which featured speakers from the Jewish Voice for Peace in Germany, parliamentarians, including myself, Dutch parliamentarians, a former Greek finance minister, many, many others, at a conference that was about the breaches of human rights of the Palestinian people and the ICJ's ruling about the possible commission of genocide in Gaza. And incredibly, the German authorities viciously attacked the conference, deployed 2,500 police at a conference of 250 people, and then banned the conference. This is a very, very serious attack on civil liberties, and we, the Irish government, should be raising this. We will be demanding the government do at a European level, particularly with the German government.
In return to our very important motion on disability rights and justice tomorrow. I think it isn't an accident that the government decided to scrap their odious proposal in the Green Paper at the end of last week, considering that they were faced with a motion this week to do precisely that. And that is thanks to the tireless campaigning of those involved in the coalition to scrap the Green Paper. As mentioned, they're going to have a protest outside the Dáil tomorrow at 11 while the debate is ongoing. We should remember that the former Taoiseach, when challenged on this Green Paper, so the Green Paper attempted to establish a Tory-style system similar to what was documented in the Ken Loach film I, Daniel Blake. When challenged on this, the former Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, said that I, Daniel Blake was one side of the story and encouraged people to also watch Benefit Street, suggesting that would give you a balanced picture. So that was how, certainly under Leo Varadkar, the government saw people with disabilities as people who were scamming the system, getting disability allowance that they weren't entitled to, and so on. A really horrific, very Tory mentality of treating people. People with disabilities have fought back. I think have firmly put this issue on the agenda, including through the mobilisation of disabled people in the course of the referendum campaigns. So I think the government is now under significant pressure. It's good that they're withdrawing the Green Paper, but from our point of view, that isn't good enough. It isn't good enough that you just withdraw odious, offensive proposals, but instead you need to listen to what people with disabilities are saying. You need to implement, look at the cost of disability, implement a proper disability allowance payment, implement a carer's allowance without a means test, actually do ratify the optional protocol to the UN CRPD, and really engage in this. One of the particular areas we're going to focus on, we've had a series of meetings across the country, is the horrendous situation that is facing children with additional needs and families with additional needs. I've been working with a particular activist who's been putting in FOI after FOI after FOI to get the figures, which are incredible, and thousands and thousands and thousands of children languishing on waiting lists, simply to get their files opened and then to get assessments of needs and then to get therapies. You're talking about years and years and years when everyone acknowledges early intervention is best and so on. Just some of the statistics, which are extremely shocking, is there's more than 9,000 children across the country waiting 12 months for initial contact from their CDN teams, right? That is literally getting it opened, getting arrangement to have an assessment of needs. It is just the very, very first stage. Almost 10,000 children waiting almost a year, or waiting over a year. The other thing, at the bottom of this, in terms of very poor treatment of children with additional needs, is the vacancy rates. The vacancy rates for therapists across the board are absolutely through the roof. So vacancy rate for dietitians is 70%. So 7 out of 10 of dietitian posts for children with additional needs are not filled within the HSE. It's 40% for occupational therapists, 30% for family support workers, 30% for care assistants, 70% for play therapists. I have a big, long FOIs which go through all of these, which are similarly in the ballpark of 30, 40, 50, 60%. That's the issue. We need to recruit people into the HSE, and we need to recruit people into our education system, because children are being failed both in terms of the HSE support they're meant to be getting and in terms of our education system. So we haven't heard yet what the government is going to do on our motion. We hope that they will allow it to pass, but we also hope then that they will not just allow it to pass and do nothing about it, as they normally do when they allow things to pass, but that the movement will continue to push them to actually implement what is outlined in the motion.